The man who once denied his own blood is now the only hope to save two children's lives. Twin boys, critically ill, their bodies frail, skin pale. A mother stands frozen in the face of the news. The doctor speaks, every word deliberate. They need a bone marrow transplant, and there's only one match, Tobias Meridian. She doesn't respond, doesn't scream, just falls silent. That name, like a blade, old, but it still cuts deep. Her mind flashes back to years ago. Tobias, surrounded by reporters, voice cold. "I don't have children. It's all fabricated." She turned away then, her hands trembling, but still clasped together. In the next room, her sons fight to breathe, unaware that the man they've never called Dad now holds the power over their lives. If it were you, would you have the courage to face and beg the one who once abandoned you? Will Tobias protect his reputation, or finally step forward as a father? Subscribe to follow the next chapter, and comment your guess. Will Tobias choose pride or parenthood? Tobias. That name kept echoing in her mind like a knife that was never pulled out. Camilla sat quietly in the kitchen, water bubbling over on the stove. She poured hot chocolate into 2 white ceramic mugs. Her hands trembled. Outside, Matteo and Alio played in the yard, joyful, loud, peaceful. She glanced through the window, but the sight didn't calm her. It made her feel more off balance. A giggle rang out. She smiled instinctively, but it faded fast. Her eyes darkened. Since that courtroom day, she'd made herself a promise. Never mention Tobias. Never think of him. Never again. But now, he was the only one who could save her sons. Camilla placed the 2 mugs on the table. Her fingers brushed the rim of one and stopped. A memory surfaced, blurry but sharp. 20th floor office. Warm yellow light spilled over the desk. She was young, still hadn't learned how to hide her gaze. Tobias walked in. White shirt, loose tie. He smiled. She looked down, avoiding his eyes. "Camilla, working late? The numbers aren't lining up. I need to double-check." He stood behind her, close, didn't touch her, but the space between them made her feel every breath. That night, they rode the elevator down together, no words. But his eyes, just as the doors closed, were the beginning of everything. A love born in silence, and from that moment on, silence became dangerous. They loved each other in the shadows. Office corners, parking lots, messages deleted seconds after reading. Camilla was never seen in public with him. No one at the company knew, and she never asked. Just once, when the loneliness grew too heavy, he held her hand, looked her in the eye. Voice soft. "Wait for me. When I'm CEO, everything will change, I promise." And she believed him, because she needed to, because he was kind, because he made her feel worthy. She never asked for a title, just truth, just for him to choose her, once, where people could see. But month after month, that promise stayed just that, and Camilla, though she never said it out loud, began to understand. This love only lived, as long as it stayed hidden. 2 red lines. Camilla sat in the bathroom, pregnancy test trembling in her hands. She picked up the phone, dialed his number. 3 rings. Tobias answered. She didn't cry, didn't blame, she just told the truth. On the other end, silence. Then a sharp exhale. The next day, Tobias showed up. Dark shirt, eyes avoiding hers. He placed a thick envelope on the table, his voice calm, flat. "This will ruin everything. I'm sorry. This is the best way, for both of us." Camilla stared at the envelope, then at him, said nothing. She stood, walked to the door. He called out, but she didn't stop. Behind that closed door was a decision that would change everything. Camilla sat in the courtroom, hands resting on her swollen belly, eyes down. Tobias's lawyer stepped forward, voice cold and precise. "She worked in accounting, had access to private funds. Her motives are clear, Your Honor." No one objected. No one defended her. Camilla clutched the edge of her dress, too tired to fight. The judge asked about the paternity test. A clerk replied, "The sample lacked certified signature, legally invalid." Tobias stood, calm as if closing a deal. "I've never had a personal relationship with her. Those children aren't mine." Silence fell. Camilla didn't cry, but something inside her broke, her dignity crushed, and with it, the last piece of trust she had in him. A screech of brakes tore through the quiet afternoon. Camilla was doing dishes. A cup slipped from her hand, shattered on the floor. Outside, screaming. Someone ran past the window shouting, "Two kids hit by a truck!" She bolted out, heart racing. No time for shoes. No time for drying her hands. Down the street. A crowd. A truck. Blood smeared on the asphalt. Matteo lay face down, leg bent the wrong way. Alio stood trembling beside him, not crying, just wide-eyed, frozen. "Mama, I didn't drop the ball." Camilla dropped to her knees, called their names. The sound of sirens grew closer. She didn't know it yet, but their survival would depend on the man she'd tried so hard to forget. Camilla sat across from the doctor, the woman's face pale, her coat stained with Matteo's dried blood, her voice steady but not cold. "Both boys have spinal trauma, but more critical is marrow failure. Without a transplant, they'll deteriorate fast, within 7 days." Camilla stood abruptly. "Test me, right now. I'm their mother." The doctor nodded, but her expression dimmed. "We will, but compatibility is under 15%, especially with twins." Camilla swayed. One hand gripped the table, her eyes locked on the glass wall. The boys lay there, still breathing, but barely. Dozens of tubes fed into one tiny frame. The wall clock ticked, each second cutting into her chest. Time was running out, and she was running out of options. The lab door closed behind her. Camilla stepped out, back straight, but her eyes red. A young nurse avoided eye contact. The doctor turned away. She didn't need words. She already knew. Camilla sank to the floor, hands covering her head. The scream didn't come out. It turned into breathless sobs. She had been ready to sacrifice everything, but she'd failed at the very first step. No one came close. Only footsteps echoed down the corridor. Then the doctor returned, file in hand, voice heavy. "We ran the entire donor database." Camilla didn't lift her head, didn't care anymore, but then he continued, clearly. "There is one person, nearly a perfect match." Her head snapped up, eyes swollen, face pale. Her hand slid to the floor. For the first time in years, that name was spoken again. Camilla stared at the file in the doctor's hands. He handed it to her. The first page listed the match, only one name, Tobias Meridian. No mistake, no coincidence, no way to deny it. She stepped back, mouth opened, barely a whisper. "No, it can't be him." She looked to the doctor. He said nothing, just stood, letting her face the truth alone. Inside her, emotions collided. Anger, fear, fury, hurt that never healed. She clutched the folder. Beside it, a photo of the boys on their last birthday. Her hands shook, not from cold, but because her heart was reliving what she thought she had buried. Tobias, once again, stood between her and her children's lives. Camilla stepped slowly into the hospital room, 2 beds side by side. Matteo and Alio lay there, eyes closed, faces pale, none of the usual mischief in sight. The ventilators hummed steadily, but every beep on the monitor made her chest tighten. She sat beside them, placing her hand gently over her son's small palm. Colder than usual. Tears fell, silent, steady, unstoppable. In her other hand, the consent form for the transplant. If she signed it, Tobias would return, along with every scar, every humiliation buried deep. But if she didn't, her son's time would slip away, hour by hour. She didn't know what terrified her more, facing Tobias or choosing death for her children. If it were you, what would you do? Would you face the one who once broke you, just to keep the innocent alive? Camilla stood outside Meridian Group's towering glass headquarters. People passed by. No one slowed. She steadied her breath, handed the receptionist an appointment slip, a glance, a phone call. Within minutes, a woman in a designer dress and heels approached, back straight, steps sharp. She stopped in front of Camilla. No name, no greeting. "You really have no shame? After all these years you come crawling back to him?" Camilla said nothing, just clutched her folder tighter. The woman lifted her chin, voice sharp as stone. "My son will never claim a bastard. What did you think this was? Royal blood?" Her gaze traveled down Camilla's body, cold, dismissive. Camilla didn't cry, but in her chest, class and color, once again blocked her from the one door that could save a life. Tobias sat behind a conference table, fingers tapping the polished wood. He looked just as he did years ago, cold, composed, distant. Camilla entered, stood a few feet away. No greeting, just placed the file on the table. He glanced at it, then looked up, expression unreadable. "I know why you're here. The doctor already contacted me." She waited. Tobias pulled out a paper from the drawer, pushed it forward. "I'll do the test. If I'm a match, I'll donate. But under one condition." He paused. His tone didn't shift. "No name, no father, no identity. You will never speak of me. To anyone. Not even to the children." Camilla tightened her grip on her bag. Her lips quivered. Tobias leaned back, voice colder. "A life. In exchange for silence. Do you accept?" A lawyer walked in. Gray suit, thick contract in hand. Tobias looked away, as if this had nothing to do with him. The lawyer laid the file on the table, tone neutral, detached. "This is the legal agreement. Sign here, and we proceed with testing. If compatible, Mr. Tobias will donate." Camilla skimmed through. One clause stood out in bold. No lawsuits, no inheritance, no legal acknowledgement. Permanent. Her hand trembled. Her eyes stopped at the final line. "Any violation will result in civil penalties." No word for father, no promises. Just a cold transaction. She picked up the pen, but couldn't write. Not from doubt, but from the feeling that she was signing away the very existence of their bond. Camilla sat before the open contract. No one rushed her, no one counted down, but time still pressed against every breath. Outside, the hospital. Inside, her sons waited in ICU. Her hand rested on the final page. The pen rolled toward her. She looked up at Tobias. His face didn't change. No nod, no gratitude. She lowered her head, signed. No applause, no recognition. Just a mother, burying her pride, swallowing every wound, for one more chance to save her children. She whispered to herself, "For them, I'll stay silent." That paper didn't just bind her legally. It bound her to a pain so deep, there were no more tears left to cry. The pre-op room was sterile, cold. Tobias sat on the hospital bed, gown on, arms folded like he was waiting for room service. A nurse asked gently, "Would you like us to call anyone before we begin anesthesia?" He shook his head without hesitation. "No, just get it done. I have a meeting at 11. His voice was flat, detached, as if this were just another task. The nurse paused, then nodded. On the table beside them, a chart labeled Bone Marrow Recipient, Mateo and Alio Jones. Tobias didn't look, didn't ask. While two children fought for every breath, the man who could save them saw it as an inconvenience to handle before a meeting. The ICU was hauntingly quiet. Two small beds, side by side. Mateo and Alio slept deeply, breathing sustained by machines. IV lines ran from their wrists, wires draped across their chests, monitors, respirators, like webs wrapping them tight. Camilla sat between the beds, not blinking. Her left hand gripped Mateo's. Her right held Alio's. Each time the monitor beeped wrong, she flinched, then squeezed their hands, as if she could keep them tethered to her. She had cried all night. Now, only red, silent eyes remained. No one knew if the surgery would work. She only knew this. If she lost even one of them, she wouldn't survive. Her entire world was laid out, on those two hospital beds. After the surgery, Tobias returned to his office. His assistant placed an envelope on the desk. No sender name, only, "To Dad, from us." He picked it up, ready to toss it, but paused. Inside, a crayon drawing. Two boys on either side of a blank space. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, "We hope you're happy, wherever you are." He read it again. No blame, no anger, just a simple wish for his happiness. Something lodged in his throat. He tried to swallow. It stayed. No one teaches children how to forgive, yet somehow they do it better than adults. And that truth made Tobias feel, for the first time, small, inside his own life. Tobias stood outside the ICU window. He hadn't called ahead, didn't say a word, just watched. Alio was awake. Mateo still slept. Camilla dozed off in the chair. Alio turned and locked eyes with him. No fear, no surprise, just curiosity. Tobias stepped in. Didn't speak. Alio handed him a folded sheet, slightly crumpled. I drew this. It showed a tiny house, Mom in the middle, the boys on either side, and next to them, an empty space, left uncolored. Tobias pointed. And what about this part? Alio smiled softly, like it was obvious. That's the space, in case he comes back. Tobias stood still, hands lowered. No one said anything more, but that one blank space was enough to shake something inside him. Tobias stepped out of the ICU, still holding the drawing. He didn't look back at Alio, didn't speak to Camila, just kept walking to the end of the hallway where no one could see. And then he collapsed to the floor. The drawing slipped from his hand. Back against the wall, Tobias tried to breathe, but his chest tightened, wave after wave. Tears fell, not loud sobs, but the quiet kind, broken open from within. For the first time, he couldn't hold the image, couldn't reason it away. No CEO mask, no logic, no excuses, just a man realizing he had missed what could never be replaced. Have you ever seen a strong man shatter over something so simple? And tell me, do you believe he deserves to be called Dad? Camila splashed cold water on her face in the hospital restroom, but no amount of water could wash away the exhaustion carved deep into her skin. The door opened. Tobias stepped in, holding a crumpled stack of papers. He placed them by the sink. It was the contract, the one she signed in silence to save her children's lives. I tore it up. Camila turned. Her eyes didn't have time to react before he added, I don't need to be CEO anymore. I need to be a father. For the first time, his voice carried no strategy, no defense, no calculation. She looked at him for a long moment. No shouting, no tears, no forgiveness, just a heavy pause, long and raw, between two people who once meant everything to each other. Tobias stayed there, waiting, hoping for an answer. Camila bent down, slowly drying her hands with a damp paper towel. Her movements were steady, but her gaze never left him. You think a few words make it right? Tobias said nothing, no protest. Camila lifted her head. Her eyes weren't filled with hate, but they still held caution. I don't get to decide for the boys anymore. She walked past him, pausing at the door, her voice low, firm. It's not me you need forgiveness from, it's them. Not an accusation, not an escape, just a mother who had learned love cannot be demanded, not even from someone who once denied it. Only the glow of the nightlight spilled into the hospital room. Camila sat between the beds, holding her son's hands. They were awake now, still weak, still unsure why they were alive. Mateo whispered, Mom, who gave us the bone marrow? Camila hesitated, then met both their eyes. Softly, clearly. It was your biological father. The room went quiet. Mateo looked at Alio. His younger brother frowned. Dad? Really? Camila nodded, slowly, without avoiding the truth. He left a long time ago, but this time he came back to save you. Alio didn't speak. He just squeezed her hand. In their eyes, something unfamiliar flickered, tentative, unsure. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of it. Mateo leaned against his pillow, his arm still bandaged, eyes a little foggy from the meds, but his voice steady. Mom, I want to meet him. Camila paused. Mateo continued. Just to see if he really cares about us. Alio, lying on his side, clutching his worn teddy bear, didn't look up. He just whispered, maybe he'll stay. Silence returned. Not from fear, but because, in the boy's eyes, something sacred had begun to take shape. Hope. Not something grand, not complicated. Just the wish of two children wondering if the man who gave them life might give them a little love too. Just a little. Enough to start something new. The park was quiet in the late afternoon. Soft grass under a fading sun. Mateo and Alio sat by the sandbox, building a crooked castle with bare hands. Towers tilted, walls fell. But they laughed anyway. Tobias stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, unsure. Camila gave him a small nod. He walked over, sat beside them, without introductions. No questions about school, no forced conversations, just silently picked up a handful of sand and pressed it onto a lopsided tower. Mateo glanced sideways. Alio looked up. Tobias spoke, barely audible. Can I stay this time? No one answered, but for the first time, the little castle didn't collapse, because 3 sets of hands held it steady, and maybe this time he truly wanted to stay. The conference room was bright with overhead lights. Shareholders sat upright, eyes fixed in anticipation. Tobias stepped onto the podium, no notes in hand, no spokesperson at his side. His voice was steady, holding nothing back. "I am officially resigning as CEO of Meridian Group." A stir rippled through the room, but Tobias didn't pause. "I'm stepping down to take on a different role, one I've avoided for far too long." He paused, then looked directly into the live camera. "I am the father of Mateo and Alio Jones, and I am proud of that." Silence swept the room. No media spin, no image to protect, just a man, laying down power to reclaim the one thing he once lost, his family. The door to Camilla's house opened. Tobias stepped in, still holding the legal declaration he had signed that morning. Mateo and Alio were on the carpet, piecing together a half-finished puzzle. They looked up at the sound of footsteps. Tobias smiled, not expecting anything, just wanting to be there. Mateo stood up first, didn't say much, just walked to him, paused, then softly said, "Dad?" Tobias froze. Alio followed, puzzle piece in hand. "Hi, Dad." He didn't know how to react, only that those two words pierced the deepest part of him. Tobias dropped to his knees between them, arms around both sons. Tears fell, not out of guilt, but because, for the first time, he was called by the name he should have heard long ago, Dad. Night. The kitchen light cast a warm glow. Camilla stood by the doorway, holding a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Tobias folded the boys' blankets carefully, slowly, gently, as if afraid to disturb something that had just begun. Camilla stepped in. He turned, waiting, for a word, a reaction, but she just looked at him, long, quiet. "I'm not forgiving you because you've changed." Tobias's hands clenched. His gaze dropped. Camilla continued, voice steady, not soft, but honest. "I forgive, because they need you, and I need peace when I see them smile." Silence settled. Tobias nodded slightly. No plea, no excuse. Camilla turned to leave, but before she stepped out, her eyes softened, for the first time in years. Not an end to the pain, but the beginning of something that might heal. Laughter filled the small living room. The four of them sat on the rug, surrounded by storybooks and scattered pillows. Camilla read aloud from a fairy tale, mimicking each character's voice, making Mateo and Alio laugh until they rolled over. Tobias laughed too, his eyes never leaving the boys. Every now and then, he chimed in, awkward, uncertain, but welcomed like he'd always belonged. A simple moment, but it held something they once thought unreachable. Mateo leaned against Camilla's shoulder, whispered, "Mom, are we a real family now?" Camilla nodded gently, didn't speak. But the glisten in her eyes said everything. For the first time, after everything broken, a home was no longer just a hope. It was here. Now. Late afternoon. The four of them walked side by side. No words needed, just warmth between every step. Tobias held Mateo's hand. Camilla walked with Alio. No one left behind. No more quiet questions about where they belonged in each other's hearts. Mateo squinted into the sunlight. Alio asked softly, "Mom, do we really have a dad now?" Camilla didn't answer right away, but the smile on her lips said it all. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite the past, but it can save the future, a future that isn't perfect, but it's enough. If this story touched you, share it. Let softness travel farther than silence ever did, and subscribe. Because the stories that reach the heart don't end where the credits roll.